Hello and welcome to week 4 of MPA 580 Legal and Ethical Issues. My name is Greg Zarko and this is my week's presentation. A quick overview of this week's presentation. Okay, so I will be um, presenting an ethical dilemma in the workplace, something that a public administrator might come across. I will briefly describe the facts of the situation and interest of the parties. I will determine my duty in the situation acting as a public administrator. I will also analyze the situation according to 2 or more ethical approaches. And finally, I will choose an alternative or I will justify the decision. Before I present the facts of the hypothetical situation I created and the interest of the parties, I would like to point out that some of the most common ethical dilemmas with which public servants are confronted revolve around the aspects of such as administrative discretion, corruption, nepotism, administrative secrecy, information leaks, public accountability, policy dilemmas, and I decided to focus on corruption. So Amanda is a public servant in San Bernardino County under the housing department with a growing family. As a housing case manager, it is her responsibility to create a list of candidates that would qualify for Section 8 or reduced housing. The list is assembled following strict policy and guidelines that the agency has created and an order has been determined. It is not uncommon for some families to be on that list for years, especially as affordable housing becomes scarcer. A family who has recently been approved to be added to the list, but with a high number, will likely end up spending a substantial amount of time on the waiting list. One day, that family approaches Amanda towards the end of her shift and notifies her that they could pay her $20,000 in cash if they are placed towards the top of the list. Knowing how the agency works, there is a possibility that Amanda can get away with it. Her interest would be the large sum of money that could help her family out, and for the client's interest could be its affordable housing in a quicker time frame. As a housing case manager, Amanda is expected to act with integrity, honesty, transparency, and openness in apartment dealings. She is never to misuse her position and power and to use it responsibly and finally earn and sustain housing society's trust. She is also expected to keep the integrity and reliability of the department since she is being given trust by handling the public's sensitive information such as social security numbers, check stubs, or other forms of income and in some cases even birth certificates. Aside from her professional obligations, Amanda's obligation was to her community, and she is serving the people that live in her community. So by jeopardizing her integrity, she loses sight of the public's interest. So the analysis 2. I looked into virtue-based theory which deals with character. A good person in this situation would not accept a bribe and would report it to their manager. Even though the money was not exchanged, it would behoove Amanda to notify her supervisor in case the family ever tries to bring discredit to Amanda's name or character. Using the utilitarian approach, Amanda would be best to question who would be affected by her actions. At first thought, the family who followed the process as designed would be affected because they would be the next in line for new housing. They would have to continue waiting, and no one knows an exact timeline of when affordable housing becomes available. The same argument applies to everyone on the list actually, and the most recent applicants who were approved would end up waiting even longer. So what would be best for everyone would be to ignore the bribe and follow through with the department standards. And finally, justice. Justice should be considered. Is it fair to everyone who was waiting on the list for their term but couldn't afford a bribe? How is the situation going to make the society that Amanda is servicing better? The answer is that it's not. If the information were to get out, then the people would soon forget the employee who took the money, but they will always remember the government program that is corrupt. So the decision, at the end of the day, the best alternative is to deny the bribe and report the situation to the supervisor. Amanda has a moral responsibility to the clients, her agency, and to herself, who is and she is dependent by the community. So while Amanda and her loved ones could have benefited from half a year's pay, ultimately it's not worth the risk of losing a steady job and the ability to walk around her county with pride. This concludes my presentation. Thank you for listening. I look forward to watching yours. Thank you very much again, and God bless.